Hey everyone, welcome back to another devlog for my solo hobby game dev project Infernomon. This past month I've been using my brain to try and enhance the little enemy AI brains in my game to make them be able to follow patrol paths, position themselves during battle, and a few other improvements. Also, since I don't have very many IRL V-Bucks, I attempted to update some of the art assets in my game myself instead of paying an artist, so make sure you stick around because you don't want to miss out on my insane art skills. So the first thing I started working on this month was the random spawning of enemy patrol packs. In my game, each dungeon will have a unique pool of enemy Infernomon you'll battle against. When a patrol pack gets created, it will randomly pull from the dungeon-specific pool of Infernomon to create a unique patrol pack. But since all the Infernomon within the pool of Infernomon have different base stat totals, a little bit of math was required to make sure the generated patrol packs are somewhat balanced and we don't end up randomly spawning a group where every enemy Infernomon is really strong or really weak. So I ended up creating a function that produces a random group of Infernomon and ensures the sum of their base stat totals are at minimum of 2000 but never above 2000 plus the lowest base stat total Infernomon. So let me quickly explain what that means. First, my function calculates what the max total base stat value is. To do that, I find my lowest base stat total Infernomon, which in this case is a Shello with a base stat total of 300, so 2000 plus 300 is 2300. Next, my function will randomly start pulling from the group of available Infernomon, but before confirming the random selection, it will make sure the stat total won't go above 2300. So for example, let's say Jack was randomly selected, but that would put the total over 2300. So instead, it decides to pick a different Infernomon, so the base stat total lands in between 2000 and 2300. Even though the base stat totals aren't what purely decide on how effective an enemy Infernomon is in battle, I think my solution is a good starting point. After getting the group spawning working, my next goal is to make a function that would create random waypoints for the patrol groups to follow. To start out, I first created a function that would make 5 attempts at finding random waypoints in the room. Each time before adding a waypoint to the patrol system, it would check to make sure the new waypoint is at least greater than 500 pixels away from the previous waypoint to create some nice spacing. Then of course, I made sure that the waypoints could not spawn on top of obstacles. After that, I needed to make it so that the randomly generated patrol pack would actually follow the waypoint system. To implement this, I updated my enemy patrol pack generation code to assign the first Infernomon as the patrol lead, and then each subsequent Infernomon's patrol lead variable would point back to the patrol leader. After multiple failed attempts to try and get the pack to follow the patrol lead like a 2x2 choo-choo train, I ultimately decided that for now I'd just have the followers follow the patrol lead in a single file line since that was a lot easier to do to start out with. After building the waypoint system and programming in the Infernomon patrolling, things seemed to be working after the first couple of tests. The enemies were following the waypoints in a single file line and I was fairly happy, or so I thought. After about the third test, I realized I made a big mistake when I spawned into the dungeon and instantly started getting mugged like an inflatable dragon at a children's medieval princess party. After that, I programmed in some logic to make sure waypoints must be at least 7 tiles away from the outsides of the map. That way, it was impossible for you to start getting mobbed the second you loaded into the map, and that seemed to work great. But I didn't like the way the enemies would position themselves when attacking you, because sometimes they would travel to a position that is super far away from where they are, when they could just move a few tiles over and still see you. So the way I wanted to update this was that when an enemy is in attack mode, and you either move behind an obstacle or you move out of range of their attack range, each enemy Infernomon would locate a floor tile that is closest to them, that is also in line of sight of you, and is not the destination tile of any other Infernomon. I thought this would make the enemies slightly smarter and would still prevent them from stacking on each other like Pringles, and instead giving some nice spacing. So after updating some code, I tested this out and was a little surprised when the ranged attackers instantly ran to the top of the map and started acting like drunk cowboys at a country bar and began line dancing and shooting me at the same time. But I instantly knew what was wrong. In my game, I procedurally spawned the floor tiles in my dungeon room starting at the top left, moving right, and then one row at a time. So instead of the enemies traveling to the closest tile to their current position, they travel to the floor tile that is in range of their target based on the order the tile was spawned in the room. This was an easy bug to fix. It only took a few lines of code. All I had to do was, before picking the first floor tile in the array, I would order that array by the closest floor tile within range of the enemy. So that's most of the gameplay updates I've made to the enemies this month. But partway through this month, I also decided I wanted to update some of the assets in my dungeon to make things look a little bit better. The first thing that was bugging me was this lighting system I implemented a long time ago. I would draw shadows behind the obstacles, but unless the obstacles were an exact square, you would sometimes get these weird little pointy shadows. I also had some shadow logic on the player and Infernomon that would draw different shadows based on their location in comparison to the torches in the room, but this was a little funky and I thought these shadows looked really weird and I didn't like it. So for now, I will be temporarily removing the lighting system I have and then just adding some more basic type shadows and then adding some more fancy shaders later down the road. In addition to that, the obstacles in my map look like a 5-year-old drew them, and I realized that I'm at least capable of making art equivalent to an 8-year-old, and it was time to take full advantage of my talents. So the first thing I decided was that I wanted to have a stronger dungeon theme. So it was time to unleash the unmatched creativity of my brain, and so I went to ChatGPT and began typing, "I'm making a video game similar to Pokemon. One of the levels in my game is a dungeon that contains 3 types of monsters, tortoise, snake, and anubis. I'm trying to design the environment and need to place. What types of objects / things would go well in this environment?" And it actually gave me some decent suggestions given my broken English. After that, I busted out the iPad, opened Procreate, and drew 3 obstacles. I drew some pots, a statue of the dungeon boss, and an ancient casket thing called a
sarcophagus.
And this had a little drawing of Jack on it. My art isn't the best and these assets aren't my favorite, but like the first girl you meet at a party freshman year of college, I told myself it's good enough for now and we can replace it with something better later on. I also bought this asset pack I'll eventually use to update my castle, but for now, I will be borrowing a torch from this asset pack and replace the existing torches in my dungeon. After I finished making the new art assets, I loaded them into GameMaker Studio 2 and added a function that would make 10 attempts at randomly placing the obstacles on the map, making sure the obstacles could not be placed directly next to each other, against a wall, or near the outsides of the map. Once that was working, I set up some invisible collision masks on the bottom of each obstacle. This allows the player to walk behind the obstacle, making the dungeon feel more 3-dimensional. Next, I added some logic that when a player or ally Infernomon is touching the obstacle and is behind it, the obstacle will quickly fade to being transparent. Like I said before, I decided to replace some weird shadow logic I had before and then just drawing these simple shadows. So I'm pretty happy with the progress I've made. There's still a lot to do. Right now, if you get surrounded by too many enemies, you blend in like a paid actor in a Mr. Beast video, so I'd like to add in some more visuals to make the character and ally Infernomon stand out a bit more. Also, when the enemies reach a waypoint and are standing still, the patrol followers just run in place instead of standing still and playing the idle animation. I'll also probably add in some more random obstacles, add in some textures to the ground so it's not so flat, and so forth. And at some point I'll need to replace this ugly bland HUD. Anyway, that's all I have for now. If you'd like to join me on my game dev journey, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Bye.